and welcome to another episode of Aamchi Legends. Today I have a very, very special guest. Well, for a change, he's behind the camera in a different way. He is none other than Shiv Aroor, who is executive editor with India Today TV. He's a very well-known face to most of us, and we are really glued to his tweets. Apart from his television big-time stint, he is also the founder of Live Fist, which is a defense website, and we'll talk about that with him. And of course, how can I forget? Author of India's most fearless. He's been a co-author with Rahul Singh, and it's sold more than 40,000 copies, and every youngster who's interested in defense has read it, knows about it, and knows Shiv more into that space. And we're going to talk to him a lot more about that. Hi, Shiv, and welcome to Aamchi Legends.
Thank you so much, Santosh. Really good to be here. Nice to see you. Congratulations on this series that you do. It's very, very interesting. Honored that you would think of me and want to interview me. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Shiv. Good to have you on Aamchi Legends. So Shiv, we know you as a television anchor, now an executive producer, but I think your heart lies on defense, coverage of defense. And I've seen your tweets, right? Wherever you have been, even in your previous experience, defense has always been extremely close to your heart. And then, of course, the two books that you came up with. Can you share a little more about your interest in defense?
It was actually kind of coincidental. I didn't, even though I did have an interest in aerospace and aircraft, I didn't start out looking to cover defense in journalism. Like most people who enter reporting, I wanted to be a hardcore political reporter in India. It just so happened that in 2004, when I'd applied for a job as a political reporter with the Indian Express, which is one of India's greatest newspapers. At that particular point of time, there were no vacancies for political reporting.
Mm-hmm.
So the editor-in-chief at that time, Shekhar Gupta, who has been a mentor for many, many years, he said, "We've got a vacancy in defense. So would you like to try this out for a few months? And then, when something opens up in the political bureau, then we'll shift you to that." So I kind of jumped at the chance. I said, "Yeah, of course. I mean, I'll do anything to be in the Indian Express at that point." So, but defense, as many defense journalists will tell you, is a kind of it's a kind of one-way street. Once you get into it, the amount of effort, the amount of legwork, the amount of mind space, the kind of work you have to do to really sink your teeth into the subject means that you are sort of all in. You're invested completely in it, and it's very difficult to pull yourself out. Apart from the fact that it's so interesting, it's so evocative, it's so to use a lazy word, it's very happening, right? And there's always it's very eventful, and apart from all the glamour and the romanticism surrounding defense, it's a great solid subject that isn't reported very well, or wasn't reported very well, but now it's increasingly being done. So this was back in 2004. So we're talking. I can't believe I've been doing defense for close to 2 decades, which is crazy. But I mean, I haven't regretted a moment of it, because it has also allowed me to see and do things that I probably wouldn't have been able to do before. Covered war, covered conflict, been in conflict zones, reported on live operations, that kind of thing. So it's been an incredible journey, but it was happenstance. It so happened that I had the opportunity to cover defense and then never looked back, really.
Okay. You've been at some of the most difficult and challenging war zones, conflict areas, be it Sri Lanka, Libya, or even Kashmir for that matter. It's very easy for a viewer to sit ahead of a TV, watch the TV and talk about it, debate about it. But if you've been on the ground there with the forces, you kind of strike a chord with them. You have mentioned that in these I will not even call the word stories, but real life challenges in your book. How has been that experience, especially when the fact that you got into this journalism when you were more at politically, you were looking at political journalism, but then you kind of, it went into defense, right? So how was it in those initial years?
It was explosive and incredible from the start, Santosh. opportunities one got as a defense correspondent was I remember that it was barely a few days after I'd started on the defense beat that my boss said the home minister is going to Kashmir. He's taking a team of reporters with him, and I want you to go. And that was my first trip to Kashmir as a journalist. And I got a chance to go there. There were talks happening between all the parties, very much like the talks that are happening now, and ironically, and so right from the word go, I found myself having the opportunity to visit troubled spots, conflict zones. Apart from Kashmir, the northeast, Nagaland, Manipur, the militancy was especially aggressive in Manipur at that time. A couple of about 5 years into the work, I found myself in Sri Lanka during the fag end of the war against the LTTE. Got the opportunity to in one way embed myself. That I mean that has controversies of its own, but
Yeah.
to get any kind of access in conflict zones, sometimes it's difficult not to sort of have to embed yourself with one side or the other.
Yeah.
It's the only way you can get into the war zone. So in Sri Lanka, one had to really sort of do that, and that's the way I got access to the front, to the refugee camps, to the actual place where the fighting was taking place. Then in 2011 there was Libya, which was like it still is for me the crown jewel, if I can call it that, of
Hmm.
my reporting experiences, because this was a live war zone where there was
Yeah.
a kinetic fighting taking place like right outside my window. And
Yeah.
we were there for nearly 2 months in
Hmm.
2011, at the peak of the fighting that took place there. Incredible, alien land, a country that was cut off from the rest of the world. So the experiences of reporting from a conflict zone is, I don't want to use any cliches, but it really is life changing.
Hmm.
You hit the nail on the head when you said it's one thing to sit in a studio, or report from, or look at these images from a living room, but
Yeah.
to actually be there on the ground. The smell of human remains never
Yeah.
leaves you when you first experience it.
Yeah.
All war reporters will tell you this: the first
Yeah.
time you get that smell from the war zone, you never forget that smell. It
True.
stays with you forever.
Mm.
And just the suffering, just the human aspect of life and death
Mm.
is is really, really incredible. It never really goes away. I wish I could do more of it. I'm an executive editor now, so I'm per force kind of chained to my
Yeah.
newsroom
True.
studio, which I love. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful job, and you have to move ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, at heart, I'm still very much the nuts and bolts reporter who'd very much rather be out there, reporting on what's happening in the world.
True. And I'm aware of your lifevest.com, defense.com. Do you get the time to update, are you active on this, or how does it work out for you?
So now, since I've become executive editor at India Today, there is less and less time for Life Fist. So we're actually in the process of building a team out, to take Life Fist forward,
Hmm.
independent of me. But I mean,
Yeah.
I'm still. It's still the website that I founded, but since I'm now full time with India Today and doing this, there is a team that's going to be formed to maintain the upkeep
Yeah.
and keep the engine turning, because Life Fist is widely popular. It's very it's a very even though I say so myself, a very well regarded and
Yeah.
admired website
Mm.
with a with
Mm.
a, with a large fan base and audience. So
Yeah.
it has a life of its own. So it can't just be left as it is. So
True.
those things are a work in progress right now. But my almost my entire attention right now is on India Today. It's a big task. Being executive
Yeah.
editor means you're in charge of the newsroom, you're in charge of the output of the channel.
True.
I also anchor a show at 5 p.m. So
Yeah.
taking all the decisions of what goes on air. So it's a
Live wire.
onerous task. It's difficult.
Yeah.
I'm very honored that the organization found it fit to put me in this position. I've been in India Today for 14 years,
Mm.
so it's a great privilege, and I'm enjoying very much of it.
True. I want to talk to you about your book and two editions, of course, right? India's Most Fearless. Amazing stories. I mean, I've read through the tweets. Of course, I haven't read your book, but I have read through the tweets, the responses, the feedback, really touching each one's heart. And again, it's not a story in the first place, it's a reality. How did it come across? How did it start off in the first place, and how has been the feedback?
Well, strangely, the idea for the book, again, it happened over a over a WhatsApp conversation. There was it was on Live Fist actually that the kind of seed was born. I'd done a post on Live Fist, a routine post, about this crazy story about this very young Indian Air Force MiG-29 pilot who had managed to land his aircraft even after the canopy had blown off in an
Mm-hmm.
very scary kind of emergency. He was flying supersonic and the canopy blew off for some reason. It shattered. He was injured, and it was quite scary. And he managed to land the plane, which showed his
Wow.
kind of presence of mind and grit. Instead of
Yeah.
ejecting, he saved himself and the aircraft.
Yeah.
So that story it kind of exploded on the internet. It went very, very viral and
Mm.
was used by a lot of media and stuff. And it was extremely well received, obviously. And so Rahul Singh, who is my co-author and a very close friend of mine for years, he called me and he said, "This story is wonderful. I'm also going to be doing it for my paper and stuff." And then it was his idea, actually. It was Rahul's idea. He says, I said, "I'm going to do more of these stories because they
Yeah.
seem to be doing really well." And he said, "Instead of doing it on your website, why don't we pool our resources and do it as a book?"
Mm.
And I lack initiative. I have to be very honest in that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It didn't strike me to write a book. I never thought I would really write a book in that sense. I'm not very disciplined. Confession.
Mm.
So it was his idea to do the book, and we did. The
Yeah.
surgical strike had just taken place. This was
Yeah.
2016.
Mm.
So there was this ready matter that we could have written
Mm.
about.
True.
And so we went to the army with this idea, the forces, and they were very amenable. The army chief
Mm.
at that time, he loved the idea. He said, "Let's tell these stories. Nobody's told these stories with any kind of simplicity and approach. And either you have these stodgy
Yeah.
history
Yeah.
books, or you have stuff that's overly romanticized and glamorized, so it
Yeah.
doesn't really depict the reality of military operations. So let's do this like this, gritty, realistic, not shy of depicting the emotions, but keeping it real, not
Yeah.
not faking what's going on." So
Yeah.
so we were very honored that they permitted us to tell the story of the Uri surgical strikes. And that was the first book that came out in 2017. As you said, you were very kind, Santosh, when you talked about how it did. It was very, very well received. Second book has done even better. That had the Balakot strikes and
Mm.
the
Yeah.
other sorts of things. We are currently working on our third book,
Uh-huh.
which will be out later this year. By the end of this year, it's slated to be out. So that's the journey of India's most fearless. It's a fully functional animal that needs to be fed. So we will
True.
continue to write these stories.
True. In fact, Shiv, these books or your defense coverage through television, you as well as other journalists, what is for the aspiring youth, right? They get encouraged. They're looking forward to getting into defense forces. The Josh is out there, right? So have you come across youth, connecting with you, asking you, and how does one really go about? Because I think this is something which a lot of youth are very keen on. And just to extend this point, our own association, Canara Saraswat Association, some years back had organized this. Aamchi's almost 500 defense were in defense in the defense area, and they actually posthumously or otherwise they were felicitated. So defense is a very focused area, and a lot of youth want to get into this. How has been the feedback to you?
It's been it was unexpected and overwhelming, Santosh. We even now, our first book came out in 2017, the second one came out in 2019. To this day, we get messages after messages on social media, via letters to our offices, emails to the publisher, with pictures of some cadet or the other, or some kid, or some class 11 or class 12 kid
Yeah.
with the book, or being presented the book or something like that. We get messages all the time, hundreds,
Mm.
thousands of messages from people saying, this is the first book I've read. I don't usually read, but I picked up this book. We
Yeah.
get many messages from people saying, your book has made me think about joining the armed forces. We've gotten, I'm not even exaggerating about this. We've gotten hundreds of messages
Hmm.
of people since 2017 who've joined the armed
Yeah.
forces. And the thing, Santosh, is this book wasn't these books weren't written as a kind of recruitment instrument. It was not
True.
to
Yeah.
encourage
That was
people to
not the
join
idea.
the
Yeah.
force.
Yeah.
The idea was just to tell, literally, I'm not trying to be modest here. The idea was to tell these incredible stories, because nobody has told these stories, and
True.
we are ultimately just storytellers.
Mm.
My job is not to run the recruitment of the armed forces. The armed forces have enough resources to do that.
Yeah.
My job as a storyteller and journalist is to tell incredible stories. My job not is not even to inspire youth. It is
Mm.
simply
Mm. True.
the inspiration, the sentiment is an 100% side effect
Mm.
of the story itself.
Yeah.
It is organic.
Yeah.
Our stories are not written to inspire, because Santosh, we have not made up these stories. We are simply
True.
telling the stories that already exist.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It's
understand.
just
Yeah.
that nobody's put them into words, right?
True. Yeah.
So to answer your question, absolutely, the inspiration has been material. We've seen it. We see parents sharing pictures of them giving their books to their kids, and then we see pictures of those kids after they've joined the forces with the book. So there's a wonderful umbilical cord that we share with our
Mm.
readers, and it's amazing. It's amazing to see that the book encourages people, even if that wasn't the intention, to put them into the armed forces. It's really happening, and I think one of the
Yeah.
most touching aspects of the feedback that we get is people who say, "I never used to read books, but
Mm. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
first
Can
book I
imagine.
read,
Yeah.
kind of
True.
it's kind of opened things up for us and made
Yeah.
us read more books." And as they always say, anything that gets people to read is a good thing.
Absolutely.
So it's wonderful, and
Yeah.
so we share a very open. We hold interactions with our readers quite often,
Hmm.
not as much as we probably ought to because of time constraints, but
True.
we're planning to do it even more. With the third book coming up, our readers have put their foot down in many ways and
I
said,
can.
you must speak to us more
True.
often. So we're going to be doing
Absolutely.
that, probably do a tour of the country, and with the
Yeah.
heroes themselves,
Yeah.
and do more. The pandemic obviously has kind of disrupted many of the live interaction plans that we had planned,
Yeah.
but I think when things get a little better, we'd like to do very much more.
True. Shiv, your journey started in almost 2 decades, and now you see journalism on a completely different level. You have social media, which I think, sometimes your news break on a Twitter possibly is even before the television news break or some newspaper news break. How challenging is it for a newsroom today, for any channel or any newspaper, be it?
The great thing about all technology and all platforms is opportunity and threat.
Hmm.
Always.
Yeah.
Social media. I'm a great proponent, advocate, and fan of social media. I love social media. I think it democratizes voices. It gives you a wonderful instant connect with your audience. It helps you meet people and get insights into the things you're doing that you probably wouldn't be able to get otherwise, or would have to pay enormous sums of money to get that kind of insight into your
Yeah.
actions or your words.
True.
It's a wonderful thing. Of course, it's a threat, because it also means that things like YouTube and video on Facebook are being watched by millions more people than who are perhaps watching television,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons why television isn't just television anymore. And I can speak for the India Today group, especially, which has done an incredible job of converging these platforms.
Hmm.
Having threads of social media running on
Yeah.
television, having a lot of your television running digitally.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, all media do it. India Today happens to do it really well, and I'm not saying that only because I
Yeah.
work here, but our teams really do it exceptionally well
Yeah.
in terms of the digital. So it's big, Santosh. It's become difficult to kind of compartmentalize media anymore.
True.
Like, I would be lying if I said I'm a TV journalist. I'm not,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
I also write. I
Yeah.
also do a lot of social media. and
Yeah.
as do most others. So there is no TV journalist anymore.
Anymore.
Everyone's a TV slash digital slash print slash podcast
Yeah.
slash
It's
audio
to be such an
journalist.
amazing journey, right? I mean, from what it started to now, how do you
Oh boy,
find the time for this, Shiv?
yeah,
Or for that
it's
matter,
it,
any journalist
yeah.
today?
It's true. I get that feeling a lot because there are simply not enough hours in the day to really squeeze enough
Yeah.
out of everything. I've managed to even with all my indisciplines, and this is not a humble brag. I genuinely find it difficult to compartmentalize my
Hmm.
time.
True.
I
Yeah.
usually save time. I save my work for the last minute.
Okay.
That seems to have worked quite well for me. I work well under pressure. But the fact that there are so many things sort of vying for your attention, there's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's
Yeah.
YouTube, there's all these things, and there are books to do, and it's they're all fantastic opportunities, and I try and focus myself to and not spread myself too thin with too many things, and I have a lot of other interests as well. I'm like hugely passionate about animals and the environment.
I
Uh,
was going to come to that. Yes, I did read about that. Yes.
I don't get even a fraction of the amount of time that I probably would have loved to spend
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
reporting on things like that. But that's a conscious decision that
True.
I can't. I have to do the things that I have the time to do, and
True.
when luxury permits, then I will do some things that are which are about concerning ecology and animals. But
True.
that's the way it rolls. That's the life of a journalist, and I don't think anybody's going to complain because the profession itself. And this goes to your question about the youth, which is that this is simply the most vibrant profession
Hmm.
that I am aware of. It may be a cliche, but it truly is a profession that is different every day.
Hmm.
It is. It's chaotic, it's fun, it's unpredictable, and I don't think any journalist would want it any other way. So,
Yeah.
to all the young people listening, if you're considering a job in journalism, don't even think twice.
Okay.
And it does not need to be your plan B. It can very easily be your plan A. The remuneration is getting better. The terms of all organizations are getting better. The pandemic has changed things so people
Yeah.
can work remotely. Digital journalism is very big right now. People are creating content from wherever they are. So journalism is terrific. So please don't even think twice. It does not need to be a plan B.
Okay. I wanted to talk to you about your grandfather, Shri Panji Mangesh Rao, and a very famous Kannada Konkani poet. Any memories, anything that you want to share with us, and your life? I mean, you've been raised in Chennai, right? And how has it been a transition to New Delhi now? And your parents, I think, are in Bangalore now. Is it true?
Yes, that's right. Panjay Mangesh Rao is actually my great grandfather. He's
Okay.
my mother's grandfather, and and he passed away like decades before I was born.
Hmm.
He passed away, I think, in the 1930s, if I'm not mistaken. So way,
Really
way,
long time.
way.
Yeah.
Even my mother hadn't seen him. He passed away even before my mother was born. And the stories I know of him are all stories that have been passed down to us in our generation by our parents. And Panjay Mangesh Rao, of course, is not doesn't just belong to the family. He's a community hero,
Yeah.
a person who's widely regarded, during the freedom movement as well. Is considered a hero of the Kodava people in Coorg because he wrote one of their, community anthems. So
Hmm.
widely well regarded. I mean, probably one of the original celebrities of our community,
Okay.
if I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
say that.
True.
And
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
uh, and uh, and yeah, a lot of people say, the literature obviously runs in your family.
Yeah.
I,
You
I,
know.
I don't know about that. I mean, I wouldn't ever presume to share that kind of amazing, lineage that he created. But it's a great feeling to know that someone so far back was also doing this kind of writing. So it's amazing. So that legacy is something that I'm very proud of. A few years ago in 2018, in fact, and this was something on social media. In fact, someone out of the blue sent me scans of a textbook, a zoology textbook, that Pandit Ramesh Rao had translated from
Okay.
English into Kannada and
Wow.
done the illustrations and marked them, and beautiful. And when I replied to that person and said, this person happens to be my great grandfather, that gentleman who was based in Mysore actually couriered that book to my mother as a
Oh, wow.
kind of
Okay.
present. And as you can imagine, it's like a family treasure now. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and yes, I was raised in Chennai, Madras at that time. My parents had my parents had moved to Madras from Bangalore in the early 70s. So and they were there for 4 decades. I was born there, did all my schooling in Madras. I left in '98 to come to Delhi,
Hmm.
where I did college, and then I was in the UK for a couple of years, and
Yeah.
then I came back. So I've been in the national capital basically for the since '98. Effectively, I've been away from home,
Okay. Okay.
and my parents, who'd spent about 40 years in Madras, shifted back to Bangalore in 2011. So they've been in Bangalore since that time. So
Okay.
now when I say I'm going home, it means I'm going to Bangalore. But
Bangalore.
even for me, mentally, Chennai
Still,
is still
yeah.
familiar and home in that
True.
sense.
Are you connected to Aamchi community, Canara Union, or anything, or when you are in Bangalore, or not much really? Yeah.
When I come to Bangalore, it's difficult not to be connected because my parents' house is like a kind of rallying point. My father is heads the Canara Union, so
Yeah.
he's very well connected with that, and through him I'm connected with all his friends, his
Yeah.
colleagues in the Canara Union, the community at large, all of their friends in the Amchi community.
Hmm.
I know them well. I keep in touch with them quite often on WhatsApp, on email, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So yes, I mean, I've got to be honest. Because of the kind of manic whirl of life, you don't get to, and being this far away, especially in Delhi, where uh, there's not much of an Amchi scene in that
True.
sense, you know.
Yeah.
So there's not very much opportunity to keep in touch, if you know what I mean. But
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, but but the threads are there. I mean, every time I go back to Bangalore, that the whole Amchi mood is in the
Amchi Kal
air,
Javano, everything is out there, right?
everything, the
Kano.
Javan, and plus you're it's Malleshwaram. It doesn't get
Correct.
more Amchi than that, right? So it's just in the air. So those
Yeah.
are very, very valued times, very valued days, which I love.
True.
Gives me that rare opportunity to sort of connect with the community, and it doesn't really even need me to do anything. Yeah, I can just sit at home. There will be all of the friends and the colleagues who come over, or I go to the Canara Union with my dad, or we go to someone's house for a
Yeah.
dinner, and everybody sort of converges there, and in those 2-3 hours you kind of catch up and
Yeah. True.
get to know what's going on in that sense in the community.
And
So
when is that vacation, if I may ask? Generally.
the weird thing is, because of the pandemic, I haven't seen my parents since 2019 December. They had come to
Yeah.
Delhi the last time,
Hmm.
but in normal course, we make it a point to go down to Bangalore at least twice a year.
Hmm.
Once sometime in the summer, once sometime in the winter. It's usually not structured, but
Yeah.
whenever it's possible to get a
Hmm.
nice stretch of days a week, we
Yeah.
we go down there. So
Yeah.
so that's usually how it is.
Yeah. I mean, fantastic talking to you, Shiv. I think, for Amchi Legends, we've been looking forward to having you on our show. So thank you so much for being on this show.
Santosh, great pleasure being with you. Thank you for your questions and your interest in my experiences and my life. I'm most happy to share anything with you in the future as well. I
Sure.
value your support, and anything I can do for the community, I'm happy to do. So thank you very much for thinking of me for your series. Thank you very much, and all the very best.
Sure. Thanks, Shiv. And well, with this, we come to the end of this episode of Aamchi Legends. Always a pleasure to have great guests coming on our show. And of course, Shiv on our episode today. A big special thanks to Samiir Halady, who has been I would say the backbone of Aamchi Legends, helping in marketing it, ideas, ideating it, everything that, and he's the one who connected with Shiv. So a big thanks to you, Samiir. And yes, from the entire team at Aamchi Legends, thank you once again. And from me, and of course, Shiv, thank you once again.